home of one of the biggest college football games of the 2024 regular season. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 5, Indiana. Joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, I think I can speak for all of us when I say at the beginning of the season, I had this one circled on my calendar. Definitely going to be one of the biggest college football games of the regular season.
It was this one and Oregon, and it was just those two. And it's like if Ohio State can get through Oregon, they couldn't. But it's like, okay, they still have that opportunity to beat Indiana, to prove themselves to the committee. And so here we are, Tom. I was walking in today thinking, this is the biggest game in the world today.
It is kind of the biggest game.
I don't know what's going on in soccer over in Europe.
Yeah, well, or nothing as big as this. Is College Game Day at a soccer game today? No.
Nope.
It is not.
No big noon kickoff at the soccer game, and no Big Ten Network at a soccer game, so I don't know what else could possibly be bigger.
Yeah, it is definitely a big game. Not one we were expecting it to be. Before the season, we went to Big Ten Media Days, and Indiana was picked 17th, 18th in the Big Ten. They didn't ask me, so otherwise I would have said, listen, top 3 for sure. College football playoff, almost certainly. Didn't ask me. That's okay. I remember Kurt Cignetti talking and thinking, I like this guy. He seems very confident. He seems to know something that no one else seems to know. They might be Tony, 12th in the Big Ten. I mean, this could be a substantially better Indiana team than we thought.
I walked away and just, you don't walk away for a while. You sit and you listen and you watch him talk and you ask him questions and he gives you answers and you're like, I would buy a monorail from this guy. Mm-hmm. He's very convincing and very confident, and then his team has reflected that all throughout the season. And I think a lot of that comes from the James Madison transfers, of which there are over a dozen that came in. And I saw something this week where, the questions back at the beginning of the season were, is it too much James Madison? And then the answers this week have been, not enough James Madison. Just imagine if you could have brought in more. But then I've also seen, it's like, this is Ohio State versus James Madison. So who would you give the advantage to? And it's not James Madison. It is a group of 5 all-star team that has come together basically and become a Power 4 all-star team in a sense, or at least a Power 4 contender because of what they've been able to do. Now, this will be the biggest test by far they've had all season, but everything they've had to this point, they have looked like you should look if you're a top 5, top 10 team.
Exactly. You have everyone who talks with a funny accent. I call it the banjo belt. But everyone from SEC country wants to just point at strength of schedule and say, well, this is the only thing that matters. And it's like, well, if you look at a lot of the other stuff, there's a stat that ESPN has that measures your, how consistently you are, judged to be 75% likely to win a game during the course of the game, or 80% likely to win a game, or 100% likely to win a game during the course of the game, adjusted for opponents. And Indiana is right at the top of that. They were in the top 5. Georgia was 33rd or 35th in that stat. And it was I wonder why they're not talking about that. It's just, Greg Sankey's tweeting out strength of schedule stats. And it's like, well, they have done to their schedule exactly what a good team would have done to their schedule. This is a game that I don't want to go overboard, but is this also the biggest game in the history of the Indiana football program?
I mean, it's the first top 5 game they've ever played, 2 top 5 teams, so I'd say it is. Now, that's a lot to carry for a team and a young team, or not a young team, a new team. They're a very veteran team, but also I think they're looking forward to it. I think they're embracing it. They want this, and this has been something that their head coach has been talking about all season long. So it's like, all of the visions have come true. So why would you lose faith now, Tom? And I see you smiling about the super chat.
And it just disappeared. Let's see if we can get it to pop back up. Nope. John K had a super chat. He says, big fan of you guys, even though I saw Tom push a little kid out of the way on his way into the stadium. Is Will K playing? Let's address the first part. I want to be clear on this. Okay. I did not intend anyone to see me push that small child. That was not my intention. That's really kind of on you for looking. It's, as they say about pushing small children, it takes one to push and one to see the push.
That's true. Hey, mind your business.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for the super chat. Yeah. Mind your own business.
As far as Will Kazmarek, okay, let's smooth transition, Tony, smooth transition from knocking down small children to the injury report. The kid is probable. It's fine. Stop complaining. Right, yeah. Will Kazmarek. Day to day. Aren't we all, Tony? Aren't we all? Will Kazmarek is playing today. That is one of the very good pieces of news for the Buckeyes. That feels, the last time he was on the field was the beginning of the Oregon game, the first quarter of the Oregon game. he came in as someone who they were really looking at. They talk all the time about the importance of good tight end blocking and how important that is in the run game. They have not, and they brought him in really specifically as a blocker. Yeah, he caught 20-something passes and a couple touchdowns the last couple of years. They brought him in to be the best blocker on the team. He looked for the first few weeks like the best blocker on the team. They haven't had him since Oregon. With all the other stuff going on and with all the tumult around the offensive line room, boy, it might be helpful to have the best blocking tight end back this week.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how long it takes him to get the rust off. And he practiced all week, so that will help. But this is going to be much more physical and moving faster than what practice has been doing. So, yeah, we'll be watching him, see how much he gets in there. Will he be splitting half the reps with G. Scott like he was before the season, or before he was out there? It was those two guys got the bulk of the reps, and then Bennett Christian, Jelani Thurman, Pat Gerd getting the others. And so now is it going to be I don't know that it would be a 50-50 split just yet. They might still be working him back in there, but is he immediately above Bennett Christian and Jelani Thurman? Because they just want to get him right back out there and help the blocking game, the running game, because this is a very, 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 very good run defense based on the numbers. And I had somebody reply to me on Twitter saying, yeah, but the teams that they're playing are always trailing. So of course the rush numbers are going to be low, but it's not just the total numbers. It's the yards per carry that is number one, number two in the nation. So it's not just about being 3 touchdowns ahead and the opponent has to throw the ball. They can't run when they're trying to run.
Well, and you can sort of slice and dice the numbers a whole bunch of different ways. As you said, it's yardage, it's yards per carry, it's, I mean, if you look at a lot of the stats, even, available yards and that kind of stuff, Indiana's defense is very, very good. It's going to be a big challenge for Ohio State to be able to run the ball. If Ohio State can run the ball, we've talked a bunch this week about what does success look like for Ohio State in terms of running the ball. And, the number that's been in my head all week is 4 yards a carry, which is not an exciting number. It's not an explosive number. I think it might be a number that gets it done today just because you don't have to run the ball a lot. You have to run the ball just enough to keep Indiana honest. And that, I think 4 yards a carry, even in the high threes, 3.8 yards a carry, that might be enough to keep Indiana honest enough to open up some things in the passing game.
Yeah, as long as you're moving the chains, you can work with those numbers. And I think one of the numbers that I threw out was if they rush for 100 yards in the second half, I'll feel really good about Ohio State's chances in winning this one. Now, you're running
that's a lot of yards in the
right.
second half,
and it's controlling the ball. Now maybe it's a 77-yard run on one play, and then the rest of the half is they're being shut down, which is not a great scenario. But if they're able to establish the run in the second half after trying to get it done in the first half and maybe not quite getting it done, Chip Kelly has been patient with getting the run going. Ryan Day has talked about that all season long. He's more patient than Day is in terms of establishing that run. So it may not look great early. I think it'll look better as the game goes on.
Yeah.
And then that's what, I don't know, we didn't really see that against Michigan because Michigan got shut down that entire game.
Yeah.
But overall, the line of scrimmage was going Michigan's way in the second half.
Yeah, it felt like that was the first time Indiana really got pushed by an opponent, and at times they were literally getting pushed in the second half of that game. It didn't turn into huge explosive numbers for Michigan by any means, either through the pass or the run. But Michigan doesn't have the skill talent that Ohio State has. You get the sense this is one where you get the sense Chip Kelly's probably going to be he probably has it written in Sharpie at the top of his play card. Don't give up on the run.
Yeah. Run the damn ball.
Run the damn ball, yes. And so run the damn ball, of course, the Seth McLaughlin hats, which smoothly transitions us, Tony, to the fact that Seth McLaughlin, unsurprisingly, out for the season. We knew that was the case. They made it official today. He is out for the season and have surgery on Monday, it sounds like. But that is a big loss for Ohio State. I think they have a viable replacement, a viable solution there to replace him. But, man, that is going to be a big loss, both in terms of just the play and just pushing guys out of the way. And, boy, they've been able to rely on the quarterback sneak and short yardage and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But also the line calls, the leadership, the cool, calm, collected under pressure. He really brought it all to them, and now he's going to be on the sidelines, certainly helping, doing what he can, is more of a coaching role, but that's not the same thing at all.
No, it seemed like so long ago that this happened. As I was writing the availability report last night, I'm thinking, Buckeyes healthy and match up against Indiana. It's like, other than the fact...
other than the major injury suffered, yeah.
Because it just seems so long ago, and you have to move on from it. And they, in terms of scenarios and replacements, I keep saying few teams would have the ability to replace this year's starting center with last year's starting center, and then replacing the starting left guard with the guy that started the first 2 games at left guard. So things could be worse for Ohio State. I think one of the reasons that the coaches and the team has been so upbeat the last couple of days is because it's been working. What they've been doing in practice has been working, and it's been effective. So there's encouragement there. And one of the things with Carson Hinsman that Ryan Day talked about and Donovan Jackson talked about was just he's a lot more confident player than he was a year ago. And as a redshirt freshman, starting center, he's feeling his way. He's not guessing, but not as confident as he is now. And so there's no guessing. There's just dictating, basically. There's detailing, telling, and there's no question mark inflection on any of this stuff. It's all he knows what he's doing. So now you just got to go out and do it. I think the bigger concern maybe is probably left guard, even though it's a huge, huge responsibility for everything that he's going to have to do at center with Carson Hinsman. But he's done it, so you know that. Austin Seerveld has started 2 games against Akron and Western Michigan. This is going to be a different animal for him. And he's played throughout, but there's a lot on him.
There is a lot on him. It's you're better prepared than you would be if this was your first career start, because that probably takes care of some of the I'm sure there are going to be butterflies, but it probably takes care of some of the butterflies that you've sort of seen it. I know my kids, when they go play somewhere new, they go play a hockey game or a figure skating competition or whatever, sometimes they want to just hey, can we just stop by the rink the night before and just sort of see it? Just a little bit of familiarity helps. This is obviously a place that Austin Seerveld's very familiar with, but the role, I think, is something that probably it helps to have that under your belt. You've been playing next to some of the same people, actually not next to any of the same people, because Donovan Jackson was the one who was out. So, you've been playing in that spot. He was playing left guard the first couple of games of the season because Donovan Jackson was out. Now, Donovan Jackson is back in, but he's at left guard, and Seerveld at left, or she's at left tackle, and Seerveld at left guard. So, it's going to be interesting. You get the vibe that there's a lot of confidence around the program, and they feel pretty good. I talked to someone earlier in the week who said that, and then we talk to Ryan Day all the time. You can tell when Ryan Day is tense, and you can tell when Ryan Day is feeling pretty decent about things. Every time we've seen Ryan Day this week, he's been focused, but he hasn't been uptight the way he sometimes can be before big games.
Yeah, no, this was not big game Ryan Day type of just short answers, no laughing, no smiling, very serious. I mean, he's still serious, but he could have been very down on talking to him when we got to talk to him on Wednesday, and he wasn't. He was upbeat because, one, they continued practice on Tuesday. They liked the response on Tuesday. Then they saw what practice was on Wednesday, and you come off the field. That's immediate. That's kind of visceral, coming right off the field after a Wednesday practice to talk to the media. No break, no nothing, and it didn't seem like things were down, and it didn't seem like that from anybody. And we've been there before where things didn't seem right, and this was not one of those times. So I think there's reason for confidence there, but also what you're going to be facing from now until you're done playing this year is the best defensive line you see. You're going to be playing legitimate defensive lines the rest of the way out. So it's not always going to look great. It never does.
Right.
But it's going to look probably as good as it could given the circumstances of losing arguably your top 2 offensive linemen this season.
Yeah, and even with those guys, I think there's a question as to how effective. I mean, Indiana's got a good defensive line. Michigan's got a really good defensive line. Oregon's got a really good defensive line. And then whoever you're playing in the playoffs, most of the teams that don't have good players in the trenches don't make it to the college football playoff. That's sort of one of those things. So we'll see how that all goes. We'll run through the rest of the availability report right now. The other guys who are out, walk-on Nolan Botto, Zen Mahalski, offensive tackle. He is still
week to week, Ryan.
Week to week, yes, week to week. Reese Stocksdale, walk-on wide receiver. T.C. Caffey, running back, walk-on, out for the season. Seth McLaughlin, we talked about, out for the season, and Josh Simmons, we know, out for the season. So those are the names to know. Take a moment, if you would, and hit the thumbs up for us. That will help other folks find these shows. We see how many people are watching, and we see how many of you have hit the thumbs up. We would appreciate it if more of you would do that. We're going to run through some of the questions right now. because you guys have been very active on here. So we're going to we'll zip through some of these questions for you real quick. Ryan Day's Beard says the James Madison Hoosiers getting a reality check today. I mean, we'll see. They maybe, but I don't know that this is one that I would look at and say absolutely. The Ohio State has this, no problem.
The Nebraska game still continues to be in the back of my mind that anything is possible, but that was a different circumstance. They'll certainly won't be overlooking Indiana today.
No. Shadrack Bell says, not surprised if it's a tight game starting off. We'll end with the Buckeyes winning big. I know that's what a lot of people say, and it's certainly possible. I think this is, with the way college football games are going this year, you don't have as many plays. So a lot of the games are lower scoring than normal, and a lot of the things are closer than they have been in the past, which favors the underdogs in a lot of cases. So
I think one thing going in Ohio State's favor is that Indiana's not going to snap the ball with 1 second left or 2 seconds left on the play clock. So there should be more opportunities for plays this one, but now will Ohio State slow it down and go back to huddling? And, because last week they were snapping the ball with 10, 15 seconds left on the clock to try to make up for Northwestern running it down. So will Ohio State go back to being a little bit slower? It's just, who knows?
Ronald Miller wants to know, how soon after next week's game will we know the seedings? So all we're going to know after next week is who's playing for the Big Ten Championship. The college football playoff does not come out. That will not come out until December 8th, Sunday, December 8th, which is the day after the Big Ten Championship game. So we will, we'll know who's playing in the Big Ten Championship after next week. We might really maybe know for the most part who's playing there this week. We'll see. Really, if Ohio State wins this, then Ohio State just needs to handle their business next week, and they will be in. If they lose today, then Indiana controls their own destiny to play in Indianapolis. So we will probably know more after this game, but we'll not know probably for sure until after next week. Matt Reynolds wants to know, why not do bookend tight ends? I think they very well might. They run a lot of 12 personnel because they like what the tight end does in the running game.
Yeah. So you'll see. I think you'll see a bunch of 12 personnel for sure.
CJ Preach says, I sure hope the offensive line issues are solved. You are not the only one who is in Columbus, Ohio, hoping that right now. Shadrack Bell says, also, I've been to games in Columbus, Eugene, and Chicago this year. I'm officially convinced that Gurdon Orr are not real and AI generated. Listen, we are around. I do see people every once in a while who are podcast listeners.
I ran into
viewers.
One this morning. Said, "Hey, heard your score prediction," and so
did they call you a coward?
No.
Okay,
that never happens.
Do better, audience. Do better.
Don't encourage people.
Market X says, Ohio State's offensive line depth has never been this good. Not saying it's ideal, but there were years with no viable backups anywhere. What's interesting is, if you look at this year's offensive line, what people were saying back in August, it was like, boy, as long as no one gets hurt, they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what it looks like today. I think that they're going to be better off than you would have expected, down 2 starters and a top backup. We'll see what it looks like. They're getting thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Well, and you've got like 4 more scholarship linemen than during the Tressel era, where Jim Tressel and Jim Ballman would try to use guys in different spots. Like Jack Newhart counted as 5 different players. Where here, they've been very fortunate to have the transfer portal help them out.
Neil Harris says, IU isn't legit. Come on, man. I would love to know which school Neil Harris is a fan of. Because I know
Purdue.
A lot of folks down in the south of the Mason-Dixon line have strong opinions on IU. I'd be interested if that's an Ohio State fan saying that or another school's fan.
I'm sure it's somebody who has watched a lot of Indiana football this year.
Yeah. David says, O-line issues are largely overhyped. Next man up. I don't know how losing your... What Outland Award finalist? Semifinalist. Center, and losing your top left tackle could be overhyped. Those are 2 guys who, an Outland Award semifinalist and also a guy who's projected as potentially maybe a first-round pick at left tackle, the most important position on the offensive line. And if left tackle's not the most important position, center is. So I don't know how that could possibly be overhyped.
I will say that I'll try to read this in another way.
Okay.
O-line injuries happen all the time,
Uh-huh.
and teams move on and put somebody in there and deal with it. So in that way, like I don't think anybody's saying, "Oh, Ohio State's season is over." I mean, they
No.
said that on Tuesday after hearing about it.
Oh yeah, sure.
But then you have a couple of days to sleep on it, and it's like, okay, all right. But again, Ohio State is very fortunate to have last year's starting center waiting in the wings. Like, imagine if he had hit the portal, then what do you do? Now you're talking about your freshman Josh Padilla.
Yeah.
And who knows what they would have been doing in left guard? I guess Austin Searveld.
Yeah.
Or Luke Montgomery without Carson Hinsman. So it's good that they were able to keep him.
Well, and I think this might be a year when everyone is learning some lessons about the importance of maintaining not just a good offensive line, but also good offensive line depth as well. Sir Eric M says, first thing I did when opening the stream was hit a thumbs up. We appreciate that, Sir Eric, and if everyone else can do that, that would be great. Roland Coco Nut says, OSU will smash today. Believe it, Buckeye Nation. I'm sure they would love to. I'm sure they would love to know. I'm sure people would be very happy if that was the case. Heath says, by the way, I live in Bloomington, Indiana. Buckeyes have a huge following here. It seems like Ohio State has a huge following just about everywhere.
Yep.
Lisa says, hello, Buckeyes. Good morning. Good morning, Lisa.
Even last week in Chicago, there were people saying, Chicago is an Ohio State town. I'm like, hey, don't tell Northwestern about that.
Yeah. Market X says 31-20 Buckeyes. I picked 31-21. It feels like that might be a one-score game late, and then they pull away, or they could be, up. It feels like the talent probably wins out there in the end. Just the talent outside, the talent on the defense overall. Says Ohio says, I think the Buckeyes slap them like redheaded stepchildren.
They're gonna push Indiana down like
a small child in the parking lot. Lisa says, how weird is it going to be back home and playing back on our field after playing in Wrigley and on a baseball field? I mean, they're used to this. This is the easy, familiar thing. If you were going back, if you were going from a road trip to a different road trip and it's a different kind of grass or something that you're not familiar with, that would be weird. This is easy. Last week was the change. Everything went fine. This week, they're back to back home to the familiar confines,
yes,
and not the friendly confines. Market X says the Wrigley experience was awesome. Yes, that was our experience as well.
Yep, for sure.
Let's see. Lisa Sims says, just watching the Big Ten Network story on Carnell Tate. It was such a great story. I didn't see that, but
about his mom.
Sure. Yeah, that was
talking to him about his mom.
That was a powerful story. Just his story was a powerful one. Ryan Ray Day says Burke and Iggy need to have their best game today. I mean, if they do, then I'm not expecting Indiana to be able to run the ball a ton. So if the corners have a good game, you feel like the safeties are probably going to have you sort of rely on the safeties having a good game.
Stopping those back shoulder throws will be key. Mm-hmm. And Jim Knowles didn't want to get into how they're going to do it or how they're going to go about doing it on Tuesday, but. They need to play physical, but not so physical that you get in trouble for it, and that's really tough for Davis and Igbinosun.
Mm-hmm. Ethan Maxfield says, who's playing right guard? That will be Tager Shabola, as it has been pretty much all season, except for when Austin Searveld was kind of rotating in with him. That has really been Tager Shabola's job all season. Matt says, this game will be decided by either defense's performance. One
way or another.
One way or good. Yeah, one way or another. Yeah, if the Ohio State defense, really, I think the Ohio State defense controls the Indiana run game. And with Indiana's offense being so RPO reliant, if Indiana can't run, that sort of takes away the R. It just kind of, then it's a PO, and then that makes you a little more easy to defend. Matt says Ohio State 31-17, but that's. You're kind of we're in the same neighborhood there. Lisa says, I think the offensive line will be okay. Can you wrap the O-line up in bubble wrap so you don't have any more injuries on the O-line?
I said it earlier in the week that every time there's just this big pileup, you're going to be holding your breath, waiting for every single offensive lineman to stand up on his own.
Yep. Sage Ohio says, grew up on the Ohio-Indiana border by Richmond, never liked the Hoosiers. Tony, Richmond, Indiana, home of, or subject of, your only good tweet ever.
Yeah, it's the Tom Raper
RV.
And I'm not going to get into the tweet. You can go to my Twitter page and find it. But
it was the Ohio-Indiana line is your favorite country band. They just sing about Tom Raper RVs. Yes, that's a pretty good tweet. Rick S says, can't afford to have any more injuries. Need to keep Will Howard healthy. They need to keep everyone healthy. I mean, you're not. There are people who they can. You could miss certain guys for a week and it would be okay. It would not be the end of the world. But you're at the point of the season where all the bad teams are in the rearview mirror, really. And I know everyone's going to go, Michigan's 5-5. Yeah, believe it or not, I have seen the Big Ten standings. Tony, do you want to take the Ohio State-Michigan game lightly at any point ever in your life?
I've already seen some Ohio State fans saying even if they win, it won't matter because it's not a good Michigan team.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, that's a good way to go through life.
Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel only beat outstanding Michigan teams. They never beat bad Michigan teams.
Yeah. Marketek says, IU fans, this football thing is fun. SEC fans to IU, I hate you with a red-hot passion of 1,000 suns. I mean, yeah, you like it. You're allowed to just say football is fun. That's okay. Like how many times have I said over the last couple weeks, this is awesome that Indiana's doing what they're doing. This is awesome that Army's doing what they're doing. Like, this is great.
And Indiana gets to experience all of that wrath, and it's like, I'm sure this is fun for them. Like, just to experience the Big Ten hate that is out there for them.
Yep. Ohio Bookseller says, big recruiting weekend. It definitely is. Is anyone watching the recruits today for their reaction? I will be down at the tunnel and be getting photos of the recruits as they're coming in. I would guess that Mark will be talking to them after the game and sort of, getting this sort of reaction after the game. We don't usually get to go up in the stands and like hang out with the recruits or anything like that, and they don't want us standing behind the bench, even if we were interested in doing that. So. Let's see. CJ Preach says, in the heat of the moment, I picked Ohio State by 21. Jordan Kaplan says, I just heard Tom cheer for Desmond Howard. What a weird thing to do.
That's weird.
I was walking in. Desmond Howard was doing some kind of a hit on SportsCenter or something, and the guy on the mic from College Game Day said, "Hey, everyone, welcome to the stage, Desmond Howard." Boo! The most surprising reaction ever. Let's see. Lisa Sims wants to know the injury report. We'll run through that real quick. No surprises on there. Will Kaczmarek is back. The offensive line, Josh Simmons is out. Seth McLaughlin's out. We knew that Zen Mihalski was out. Other than that, it's T.C. Caffey, Nolan Votto, and Reese Stocksdale, 3 walk-ons there. So those are your guys who are out. We got a super chat. So BA47 wants to know, any recommendations on sites to see for a 37-year-old Dayton-born, Michigan-raised, St. Louis Buckeye fan finally make it to his first game at the Shoe? So what I would say is I would go to Skull Session. I would run over there. That's a couple hours before the game, so that should be 10 o'clock. Usually it starts. Get there a little early so you get a decent seat. That's kind of a cool, different little sort of experience. The team will go through. They're not there long, but they go through and we'll kind of talk to the fans real briefly. You get to hear the band warm up. They're always fantastic. Today, Tony, do you know which high school band is visiting Skull Session today?
Let me guess. Is it the Granville High School?
The Granville High School Blue Aces from Lincoln County, home of my kids, my wife, and me. So, yes, I know a bunch of, and my daughter now being in high school, I'm like, I know a bunch of those kids. So I'm probably Tony, breaking news, I'm probably going to run over to at least a little Skull Session. Yeah. So, yes. So, yeah, but it's always a cool thing. They always have a high school band there, which, then that, sort of primes those kids to end up wanting to be in the Ohio State band.
I always tell people afterwards, just go walk around campus. Just check out the Oval. Go see the sights.
Yep.
Thank you for the super chat.
Thank you for the super chat. Just kind of looking through lots of conversation about Tom Herman. No, I'm not expecting Tom Herman to come back to Ohio State. Man, Marketek says, if Austin has a good day, then baby, we got a stew going into Michigan. That is tremendous. I use baby, we got a stew going at some point this week, and my wife like, where is that from? Oh yeah, okay. Let's see. Sage has my high school, National Trail High School, right by the arch on I-70 on the border. Neil Schwartz says IU is going to win this game. Do not doubt them. Well, you'll have to take that up with about 80% of the rest of the chat here. We're not doubting them. We're saying they're good. We're just not. At Lisa Sims says, yeah, okay, we definitely cannot overlook our rivals, no matter how bad they may be. They'll get bowl eligible if they beat Northwestern today. Yeah, that's certainly something that's certainly something to watch. And yeah. Matt Reynolds says Michigan notice of allegations should be extremely soon. Michigan has to respond to the notice of allegations. Like this weekend, I believe, is the deadline. So David wants to know if there is a previously unsung hero in this game. It will be Has Austin Searfeld been previously sung?
Have you sung about him?
I don't think so. So
You know, I think maybe singing a different tune about Carson Hinsman would be it's a different position, different song being sung. Have we talked enough about Sonny Styles and his impact? Maybe there, maybe. I don't think we talk enough about Jordan Hancock either, frankly.
yeah, and those safeties are going to be a big part of this. If you can keep things in front of you and not let Indiana get big, pick up big chunk plays, and Indiana can't run the ball, they're really going to have to consistently execute to stay on the field. Okay, Cool says expect JJ to be its full strength Jeremiah Smith. I think the answer is yes.
Well, Tom, I was walking in here and it's kind of chilly. And I'm thinking this is going to be the coldest football game that Jeremiah Smith has ever played in. Do you think it impacts him? I mean, he's been practicing in it, but we don't know how well he's been practicing.
Yeah, I have a feeling, like, based on what we saw after practice on Wednesday, he did not have a big wrap on his ankle. He didn't have, I don't think there's any kind of real concern.
I will also say last week was probably the coldest game he's ever played in as well.
Yeah, well, last week was what, 50
Yeah,
maybe?
that's what I'm saying.
And today's was like 42 when I was driving in, so it should warm up. It should be around, high 40s, maybe 50 around kickoff time. It's not super windy. It's not sunny, so it's one of those days where it's probably going to be 48 or 50, and it's going to feel like it's 42 or so, but it's not. This is not.
Could be much worse.
Yeah, that could be much worse. Will be much worse probably some places in a month or so. Let's see. Yes, Market X says Granville, home of Scott McMullen, the backup
Everybody
for Craig
knows
Krenzel.
that.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes. Bill Evans is rooting for a faster start from the defense today. Boy, if Ohio State can come out of the chute a little more awake / alive, and really they had a 3rd and 13, they could have gotten off the field on the first set of plays, and then we're having a very different conversation about last week's game.
I've seen some sentiment that Ohio State, if they win the toss, should take the ball and get going and get a fast start and get the ball, just get a score on the board. I think in a game like this, you always kick and you let the crowd dictate that first possession, because it's tough to just, it's a big game, so you're expecting a little bit of nerves, so why not let your defense get out there first and let Indiana deal with their nerves and the crowd.
Yeah, and Ohio State is so big on the middle 8 and winning the middle 8 that they always want the ball in the middle, in to start the second half. Because then you have a chance to potentially score at the end of the first half, get the ball right back, score again, and then you could turn a 10-7 game into a 24-7 game or a 20-7 game or something like that very quickly.
And Ryan Day said last week they thought about taking the ball because they knew Northwestern was going to run the clock. They don't expect that to be the case this week.
Okay, Cool says over under 1.5 trick plays from Indiana. I will take the over. They've had a couple weeks to get ready. That week off last week, Lathan Ransom called it unscouted plays, which means new stuff you haven't seen on film before. I'm guessing you're going to see a bunch of stuff that, what does Indiana have to lose? You throw it out there because you win the game, and boy, that shuts up the entire narrative around your team.
Even if you go down swinging.
Yeah.
That's some narrative closing there.
Rick S. wants to know any injuries on the Indiana side. They lost their starting right guard a couple weeks ago. That was before the Michigan game. So that's really the big injury on their side. I don't think, all the other guys, there were a couple guys that got hurt in the Michigan game, a running back and a wide receiver. Those guys were both fine and practicing. So they apparently everyone should be fine.
Yeah, nothing major that we've heard.
Yeah. Rick S. says if Indiana loses the toss, you have to defer. Bill Evans says, they quoted me, my life is complete. Wow. We got to talk about goals, but first we got to talk about hitting the thumbs up, because I see how many people are watching and I see how many thumbs up we have, and it's like really help us out if you hit the thumbs up button right now. Lisa says, I'd love if we could force Indiana to turn the ball over. Boy, this year's Ohio State team has been a gripe about the Ohio State defense for years and years and years. They've been forcing turnovers this year. They've been pretty effective on that front. So, there's a bunch of stuff. We've talked about a bunch of stuff over the course of the week about if Indiana can't run the ball, that's going to make it hard for them to win. If Ohio State can run the ball, that's going to make it hard for Indiana to win. Indiana probably has to win the turnover battle. I mean, it would take a lot for Indiana to be even or minus in turnovers and still win the game.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Will Howard has not turned the ball over in the past 2 weeks, but look at the opponents, Purdue and Northwestern. You wouldn't expect him to. He turned the ball over just about every week against everybody else, the top opponents that Ohio State has played. So can he avoid those turnovers playing another top opponent? You would hope for his sake and for the Ohio State Buckeyes' sake, but we have not been able to see him stay consistently away from the turnovers against good opponents.
Market X says, need hats that say like the damn video. Man, that's pretty good idea, in fact. Eugenian says, I watched the 1-1-68 Rose Bowl. So that would be the year before Ohio State beat O.J. Simpson in the Rose Bowl. I believe it was USC 14, Indiana 3. Guess it's been that long since Indiana had a real contender in football. It's been that long since Indiana had a 9-win team in football, which is crazy. They had I think they were 9-1 that year, or 9-2 that year. They had the only time they've been unbeaten through 10 games in school history was 1946. They were 9-0-1, and that's it. So that's going to be let's see, hang on. Don't post the same thing 3 times. Okay, thank you. This is like unprecedented ground for Indiana. They've never been 10-0 in program history. I really don't quite get the race to tell everyone secretly they suck. Like, what? Why?
Yeah,
like, just we'll all find out together. Like, maybe they do, but the point spread is not Ohio State by 28. The point spread's Ohio State by, it got up to like 13.5, and then it was back to 10.5 or 11, something like that. So, I think broadly the expectation is that no, it's not. This is not going to be, Ohio State 52, Indiana 7 or something like that. Okay, Cool wants to know, more likely, Ohio State blows Indiana out or Ohio State loses to Indiana?
That's a really good question.
He specifically asked you.
I think
it was implied.
Well, and what is a blowout? Is that 4 touchdowns? Is that 3 touchdowns?
Right.
Like
well,
24.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Fetter says 10.5 point line for Ohio State right now.
I think it would be more like, that's
three scores. If we're talking about 3 scores, that's
9 points.
3 scores is no. Thank you, Kirk Ferentz. 3 scores is 17 points or more.
Yeah.
So is that a blowout? If that's a blowout, then that's less than a touchdown more than the spread.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to go 2 scores the other way from the spread, so you'd have to say that way. Now, is a blowout 28 points? In that case, no. I'd say Ohio State losing is more likely than Ohio State winning by 28. But
and I could see both.
Yeah, you could see both. And some of this is going to be, how does the game start? If the game starts with Ohio State up by 14, it's possible Indiana falls apart. It's not guaranteed by any means, but we saw when the going got tough for Indiana in the second half against Michigan, they didn't respond great.
Yeah.
So if the crowd's really going and things are really rolling against them, and they then they're really one-dimensional, and they have to pass, then you can really tee off on the quarterback. Then that's where you get into really into the danger zone.
I do wonder how much the experience against Michigan maybe kind of woke them up or made them realize, like, okay, we are at this level, and we thought we were maybe here, but now we realize we're closer to here. And if that just carries into the Ohio State game, where if it does become 14-0, they're like, okay, we thought we were here, but it turns out we're like, reality maybe sets in. But there's part of me that thinks like they don't live in reality, but then there's the other part of me like, no, this is who they are. Like, so that this is the ultimate reality in terms of they believe they're good and they have been playing well, and now they're going to carry that in. I don't expect them to fold. I don't expect them to. They got a little conservative in the second half last week, but they're up 17-3. So it's like, why not? If they're in that same situation here where they're down 17-3, or they're going to keep swinging, I don't expect them to slow things down or go conservative. Even up 17-3, if they were up 17-3 Indiana, did they learn their lesson, or was that confirmation that's good enough? I don't think you can do the same thing against this Ohio State offense.
No, that's the thing. I think that's the biggest difference between being up 17-3 against Michigan and being up 17-3 against Ohio State is Ohio State has an offense this year. Michigan, not so much. So I think you're going to probably manage this game a little differently. I do wonder if you get to a point where you're, in the fourth quarter, is don't lose big and just keep it close. Is that the primary is that the primary decision point, or is it? Are you really trying to play to win the game, even if you're down a couple scores, and you are as likely to turn a 10-point deficit into a 21-point, 28-point deficit, which then maybe you do knock yourself out of the college football playoff. Mark says Indiana has been a good fourth quarter team. I think their fourth quarter margin of scoring margin is better than any other Big Ten team in any other quarter. I believe
even Ohio State's third quarter.
Yeah, Ohio State's third quarter was like a plus 98, and Indiana's fourth quarter is like a plus 111, something like that. So they have really, finished the drill.
I think it's mostly due to a bad schedule.
Well, Tony, you're not the only person. Thank you, Paul, for Paul.
Bad schedule.
Yeah, you are not the only person to say those words out loud in that order this week. But, Indiana has a chance to shut a lot of those people up today with a win at Ohio State. Ohio State has a chance to really set up a monster game against Michigan next week. It is going to be a fantastic week. Every year, there is the moment during the game. In general, this is Ohio State playing a team that is not as good as this year's Indiana. But when they have played 2022 Indiana or 2021 Maryland, or I can think back to these games, and it's always there's a moment in like the third quarter where Ohio State's up by like 4 touchdowns, and it's like it's Michigan week. Yes, so it will at some point today.
The next time we talk to you guys, it will be Michigan week, but we'll still have to unpack this one.
Yeah. This is
where in the past it's just been like, okay, now to Michigan.
Yeah. Now that garbage is out of the way, we can talk about the thing that we've all wanted to talk about. It's going to be a heck of a post-game show. Gary real quickly wants to know, does the coaching staff have confidence in offensive line version 3.0 moving forward? This is actually offensive line 4.0, because you had the original offensive line. We're not even counting the one where Donovan Jackson was out. That was like the beta offensive line, beta testing offensive line, not the modern usage of beta, sorry. The beta testing version of offensive line, and then 1.0, and then 2.0 was Zen Mahalski, and then 3.0 was Hinsman at left guard, and now you're on 4.0. So, but yeah, all indications from people we've talked to behind the scenes, all indications from the way Ryan Day is acting this week is they feel like they are, they are in a good spot right now, especially given where they could be with version 4.0 of your offensive line. That can get real ugly for a lot of teams, and it feels like they think, all things considered, they're not in a bad spot right now.
I mean, just imagine talking to Ryan Day in like April saying, hey, just so you know, you're going to go through 4 different offensive lines before you even get to Michigan. How do you feel about that? And you probably just see like the life drain from his eyes.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was only a year ago where at the end of spring ball, he was talking openly about the fact that they were not good enough and they needed to get some stuff fixed. And to be where they are and to still be in the position, to be where they are in terms of injuries and still be in the position they are in terms of having every possible goal still in front of them. The 3 goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. They say those are the 3 goals every year. It's been a while since they've checked those boxes. It is the weekend before Thanksgiving, and they still have an opportunity to check all 3 of those boxes. So we will be back after the game with what should be a lively, informative, exciting, interesting post-game show. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Go ahead. I can see how many of you have done it, and I'm a little disappointed in some of you. I'm not going to lie. But make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, because we're going to have all sorts of stuff coming after the game. We generally crank out a bunch of extra podcasts, Michigan week, where we always try and sort of front load the week, because we know a lot of you guys are traveling. So if you want to make sure you subscribe to our podcasts on your podcast platform of choice. You can find the Buckeye Weekly podcast. That's Tony and me. You can find Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. That's the one I do with a rotating cast of characters. But if you just search Buckeye Huddle, you can just subscribe to all of them. We do the Skull Session podcast. That's Mark Givler does his recruiting podcast. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about on the recruiting front the next couple weeks as well. So lots of stuff to talk about. We will see you guys after the game.